Not everything that's buried is meant to stay hidden. Some things, especially the ones we've locked away the deepest, are buried alive, and they haunt us in subtle ways, in the decisions we regret, in the relationships we sabotage, in the quiet moments when the mask slips and all that's left is the raw truth we try to avoid. You see, most people think the pain they feel is caused by the world outside, but what if that ache, the one that keeps showing up in new forms, is actually a message from within? What if it's your soul tugging at your sleeve, whispering, "Remember me?" We all wear masks. It's part of surviving. You learn early on what earns love, what keeps you safe, what makes others proud, and so you play the part. You become who they need you to be. But every time you silence the truth, every time you abandon a part of yourself to fit in, that part doesn't die. It waits. And it watches. And eventually it finds a way to speak. Sometimes it shows up as anger, as anxiety, as numbness, as that deep, inexplicable fatigue that sleep can't cure. It shows up in failed attempts to change your life, in goals that don't satisfy you even after you reach them. And no matter how far you run, it catches up, because what you're really running from is you. Carl Jung wasn't offering a philosophy. He was offering a path, a way back to wholeness. But the doorway isn't where most of us look. It's not in fixing the world around us. It's not in becoming more likable or more successful or more in control. The doorway is within, in the discomfort, in the tension, in the quiet moments when you're brave enough to ask, who am I really, when no one's watching? It's easy to say, be yourself. But most people have no idea who that is, because the true self isn't built on performance. It's revealed through the excavation of what you've buried. Your sadness, your rage, your longing, your wildness, all the things the world taught you to hide. That's the shadow. And no, it's not evil, it's misunderstood. Inside that shadow is every part of you that once said, I want, and was told, you shouldn't. Every instinct you felt and were taught to fear. Every truth you knew and were told to deny. And if you keep rejecting those parts, they don't go away. They drive your life from the dark. But when you turn toward them with compassion instead of shame, everything begins to shift. You don't become someone new. You remember who you were before the world told you who to be. This isn't a process of addition. It's subtraction. Removing the layers, letting go of the false selves. And it's terrifying, because the person underneath might be someone you haven't seen in years. But they're still there, waiting. And no, this isn't about perfection. Jung was clear. The goal is wholeness. To be able to look at every part of yourself, the light and the dark, and say, yes, that's me. That's where power lives, in radical self-acceptance, in owning the contradictions, in becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to hide anymore. But don't confuse wholeness with ease. The truth will break you before it heals you. It will dismantle everything false. It will challenge your identity, your comfort, your control. It will ask you to let go of the stories that once kept you safe but now keep you small. Are you willing to lose who you thought you were to become who you truly are? Because that's what this journey demands. Not a tweak, not a surface-level shift, a complete inner revolution. And yes, the world might not understand it. The people who love the version of you that smiled through the pain might resist your transformation. But you didn't come here to be understood. You came here to be whole, to be real, to be free. So let the world misinterpret you. Let them call your silence distance. Let them call your truth rebellion. You don't owe anyone your authenticity in diluted form. This is your life, your mind, your soul. And if you don't claim them, someone else will. There is no savior coming, no perfect moment arriving, no external permission slip granting you the right to be who you are. That permission has to come from you. And maybe today is the day you stop waiting. Maybe today is the day you turn inward, not with fear, but with fierce devotion. Because when you meet the parts of you you've disowned, and love them anyway, something sacred happens. You come home, not to a place, not to a role, but to yourself. It's not easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But somewhere buried beneath that discomfort, beneath the fear and resistance, it's a quiet kind of freedom. Not the fleeting kind that depends on circumstances, but a deep inner liberation, the kind that doesn't scream for attention, but simply glows. It glows from a place within you that's always been there waiting, a place that knows who you are, beyond the masks, the noise, the expectations, A place that isn't asking you to become more, but to finally stop pretending and just be. If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own skin, like you're drifting through your days with no anchor, no clarity, no sense of self, take a breath. That feeling isn't failure, it's a message. Something inside you is asking to be seen, something old, something sacred. The part of you that's been buried beneath years of trying to be enough, of bending to fit into boxes you were never meant to fit inside. Carl Jung didn't speak of darkness as something evil or dangerous. He saw the shadow as a gateway, not to be destroyed, but explored. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's the part of you that learned how to survive when you were too young to do anything else. It's the emotion you weren't allowed to express, the truth you had to bury, the wildness you were told to tame. But inside that shadow is something more than pain. There's power there, the power of unclaimed strength, the passion that got locked away with your shame, the creativity that was silenced when you were told to be realistic. Your shadow holds all the parts of you you've been taught to fear, but also the very parts that make you whole. Every time you hide your anger, force a smile, pretend you're not hurt, every time you deny what's real, you build a wall. It might protect you for a while. It might keep you accepted, safe, in control. But over time, it becomes a cage. You stop being alive and start just existing, going through the motions, disconnected from something you can't quite name. Maybe you've achieved what you thought you wanted. Maybe your life looks good on paper. But deep down, it still feels like something's missing. That emptiness, and it's not a sign that you've failed. It's a sign that your soul is knocking on the door, asking to come home. That this is the wound of the modern world. We trade truth for approval, depth for speed, presence for productivity. We're praised for keeping it together, for staying busy, for fitting in. But in the process, we abandon ourselves. We polish our personalities until they shine, but underneath we're exhausted, number lost. And the worst part is, we think that's normal. You cannot fill your life from the outside in. Not with success, not with love, not with anything that can be taken away. If you're leaking self-worth, no amount of external validation will ever feel like enough. The only way out is through the discomfort, through the fear, through the stories you've been telling yourself about what's wrong with you. Healing starts when you stop running and start listening, when you turn toward the pain instead of away from it, when you hold space for the parts of yourself you were never taught to love. And then something shifts, slowly at first, quietly. But it's real. You stop needing to hide. You stop apologizing for your existence. You begin to show up, not as a performance, but as a presence, rooted, honest, whole. That's the kind of authenticity that doesn't need to be proven. It's felt in the way you speak, in the way you walk into a room, in the way you love, not from a place of needing, but from a place of knowing. And if you can imagine for even one moment what your life would look like if you stopped pretending, if you allowed yourself to be fully, wildly, unapologetically you, and then you've already taken the first step back to yourself. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you no longer need to perform, no longer need to hide the parts of yourself that feel too messy, too fluid, too human. There's no more shrinking to fit the mold, no more silencing your truth just to keep the peace. Instead, you begin to stand in something solid, something unshakable, the raw truth of who you are. Not just the polished part, it's not just the highlights, but the full picture. The fear, the heartbreak, the confusion, the contradictions, all of it. And strangely, that's where you start to feel whole. Not because you've fixed everything, but because you finally stopped trying to be someone you're not. That's the essence of the journey Jung spoke about. Not to become perfect, but to become complete. And completeness doesn't come from denying your shadows. It comes from holding them in the same arms you hold your gifts. From knowing that you can be deeply afraid and still show up. That you can carry wounds and still walk with wisdom. That you can feel broken and still be enough. Real strength isn't found in pretending you've got it all together. It's found in showing up anyway, with your scars and your doubts, and choosing to be honest. But honesty is hard. It demands a kind of courage most people aren't taught. It asks you to look inward when it's easier to point fingers. It asks you to sit with your feelings instead of distracting yourself. And maybe that's why so many people never reach this point, because it's uncomfortable. It means giving up the masks. It means letting go of the story you've told yourself just to survive. But beneath the fear of facing yourself is something powerful, liberation. The kind of liberation that doesn't come from success or validation or being liked. It comes from knowing you've got nothing left to prove. We all carry shadows. We all carry light. And what changes everything is when you stop hiding either. When you allow your contradictions to breathe. That's when the healing begins. Not by force, but by presence. By letting the different pieces of yourself coexist without shame. And something profound happens when you stop trying to fix your darkness and instead choose to hold it with compassion. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You stop running from your truth. You stop needing approval just to feel worthy. And in that space, peace finds you. Not because the world changes, but because you do. This journey is not a straight line. It's messy. Some days you'll feel like you're evolving. Other days you'll wonder if you've gone backwards, but that's part of it. Growth doesn't always feel like growth. Sometimes it feels like falling apart, like questioning everything you once believed. And still, every step you take toward your own truth begins to loosen the chains. You start to see the patterns that once kept you small. You recognize the ways you used to betray yourself just to belong, and they start to lose their grip. Not because you fought harder, but because you woke up. It's not the world that needs to change. It's your awareness, your ability to see clearly, to see yourself not through the eyes of judgment, but through the lens of understanding. That's what self-acceptance really is. It's not resignation. It's not giving up. It's a radical decision to stop fighting who you are and start working with who you are. And from that place, you stop needing to escape. You begin to build a life that feels like home. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are, beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the expectations. It's not about isolating yourself. It's about integrating the forgotten parts, reclaiming the inner voice that always knew the way. And that voice doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up in dreams and symbols and gut feelings that don't always make logical sense but feel deeply true. That's your intuition. That's your compass. But to hear it, you got to turn down the volume on everything else. All the opinions, the distractions, the pressure to perform. You've got to slow down enough to actually feel what's happening inside of you. And yes, that can be unsettling, especially if you've spent your life trying to be what others needed you to be. But what if you allowed that fear to be a sign? A signal that you're stepping into something new, something real. Because the truth is, you're not lost. You're not broken. You're unfolding. The discomfort you're facing now, it's not punishment. It's your evolution in motion, a deep, necessary stretch toward becoming all of who you are. And yes, it hurts, but it's the kind of hurt that wakes you up, the kind that clears away everything that's no longer aligned. You're not going backward. You're being called forward. Into your wholeness, into your truth, into yourself. You're not just changing. You're shedding old layers, releasing identities that once defined you but no longer feel true. And in that empty space, something real begins to emerge, something raw, honest, and deeply yours. The shift doesn't just stay within you. It spills into everything. The way you show up, the way you speak, the kind of energy you invite. People who once drained you start fading into the background. And without even trying, you begin attracting those who see you, really see you, the ones who meet you in that depth you used to hide. Carl Jung understood this well. He believed that every relationship in our lives is a mirror, not just the joyful ones, but the painful, uncomfortable ones too. They show us what we're ready to see in ourselves. So instead of pointing fingers and asking why someone hurt you, a more powerful question is, what is this teaching me about myself? What part of me did this awaken? In doing so, you stop giving your power away, you stop waiting for the world to change, and begin shaping it from within. It doesn't make life flawless, but it makes you fearless in facing it. And something beautiful happens when you come back to yourself. You stop obsessing over a control, that constant need to fix, manage, predict. It begins to loosen its grip, because you realize the real safety isn't out there. It's not in other people or outcomes or timelines. It's in you, in the quiet knowing that no matter what happens, you have yourself. Jung spoke often about trusting the process, even when it makes no sense. He taught that life speaks in patterns and signs and moments of perfect alignment when everything just clicks. Not because of logic, but because you're finally in sync with your truth. Have you ever noticed how the right person shows up just when you needed them? Or how a solution appeared the moment you stopped forcing one? That's synchronicity, not luck, not coincidence. It's life responding to the clarity of your inner world. But to experience this alignment, you have to be willing to get real with yourself. No more pretending you're fine when you're unraveling inside. No more trying to attract love while abandoning your own heart. The universe doesn't respond to your masks, it responds to your essence. And it's that essence, even in its imperfections, that carries your power. Jung never asked us to be perfect. He knew that perfection is just another mask, another performance. The real strength lies in being whole, not flawless, but whole. And to be whole, you have to embrace what you once tried to bury, the shame, the fear, the beliefs that told you you weren't enough. Maybe you grew up learning you had to earn love, that worth had conditions, but that story was never yours. It was handed to you, and now you have the choice to let it go. That's where the true transformation begins, in the quiet moments where you question what you've accepted as truth and start writing a new one where your value isn't measured by how much you give or how little you need, one where your voice matters, one where being yourself isn't something to apologize for. But this journey isn't light work. It's brave work. It's looking your past in the face and saying, I see you, but I'm not ruled by you anymore. Letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that clinging to what hurts just because it's familiar only keeps you stuck. And yes, stepping into the unknown can feel like standing at the edge of a cliff, but it's also where you find your wings, because when you release what no longer fits, you don't lose yourself. You find space for who you truly are to rise, and life always honors that kind of courage. The moment you let go of what no longer resonates and something greater begins to move toward you, not because you chased it, but because you made room, because you said yes to yourself, and the universe always answers that kind of yes. There were moments you held on too tightly, to people, to roles, to identities you outgrew. You convinced yourself it was strength, that loyalty meant staying, that perseverance meant never letting go. But beneath it all, there was a quiet knowing. Something inside you whispered that release was not weakness. It was freedom. Letting go wasn't failure. It was the beginning of self-respect. It was the moment you stopped trying to fix what was never yours to carry and started choosing yourself. And something shifted, not just around you, but within you. The air got lighter, your breath deeper. That single choice to release what no longer served you sent a signal to the deepest parts of your being. A signal that said, I'm ready. I'm ready to live in truth. And when you do that, life begins to mirror your courage. People who once drained you fade into the background. In their place, a new kind of connection emerges. One that doesn't demand masks or compromise. A connection that sees you, all of you, and doesn't flinch. Carl Jung spoke of this alignment where the conscious and unconscious meet in harmony. It's not perfection. It's not a life without chaos or conflict. But it is a life rooted in clarity. You begin to respond rather than react. You face storms not with panic, but with presence. Pain still visits, but it no longer defines you. It teaches you. It strips away the unnecessary until only what is real remains. Even your wounds become sacred, revealing pieces of yourself you once abandoned. The true power was never out there. Not in outcomes, not in control. It's always been inside. In your ability to sit with discomfort, to meet your own eyes in the mirror without turning away. To honor the feelings that rise instead of silencing them. You start to understand that your emotions are not enemies. They're messengers. Each one carrying a story, a wound, a truth longing to be heard. And when you listen, really listen, you start to come home to yourself. Imagine the kind of life that emerges from that place, where your choices flow from your inner compass, not the noise of fear or the hunger for approval. Where you no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer beg for validation, you embody it. That life isn't reserved for the few. It's available to anyone brave enough to begin. But it asks for something in return. It asks for devotion, not to perfection, but to honesty. Not to fitting in, but to becoming whole. With wholeness comes clarity, a kind of stillness that doesn't get shaken by every passing doubt. You stop shrinking, you stop apologizing for taking up space. You walk into rooms and take your truth with you, and something beautiful happens. You begin to lead by example without even trying. Your presence becomes permission for others to show up as themselves too. Because when one person chooses authenticity, it echoes, it invites, it heals. Jung didn't chase happiness, he sought wholeness, because happiness comes and goes. But wholeness, it stays. It carries you through the storms. It's what you return to when the world makes you forget who you are. And to nurture that wholeness, you must choose your circle with care. Energy is contagious. And if you're constantly surrounded by people who feed your doubt, your light dims. But when you stand beside those who are also doing the inner work, who aren't afraid of their shadows, you rise together. This journey, though deeply personal, becomes something far greater. Your transformation becomes a lighthouse for others lost in their own darkness. Your healing gives them hope that maybe, just maybe, they can heal too. And that's the beauty of it. You're not just rewriting your own story, you're making space for others to find their voice. You become a quiet revolution, not through force, but through presence. And yes, there will be days that test you, days where you wonder if it's worth it, where the path feels lonely or unclear. But even then, every breath you take in alignment with your truth is a victory. Every time you choose yourself over the past, over comfort, over fear, you rise. Bit by bit, you reclaim yourself. And that is the greatest act of love you will ever offer. Every time you pause and truly listen to that quiet voice inside, something begins to shift. Every time you let go of what no longer feels right, you're not just making a choice. You're making a declaration. You're telling life, I'm done pretending. I'm ready for what's real. And that's when things begin to move. Not with force, but with flow. A stranger says the right thing at the right time. An idea sparks out of nowhere. An opportunity falls into place. These moments aren't accidents. They're reflections of your own alignment. When you begin to live from your truth, the world responds differently. It's like the fog starts to lift and suddenly the path becomes clearer. There's a kind of magic in trusting yourself. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet confidence that says, I may not have all the answers, but I know they're already inside me. Carl Jung spoke of this inner wisdom, the unconscious guidance always whispering beneath the noise. But to hear it, you have to stop chasing approval. You have to stop drowning in distractions and begin tuning into the frequency of your soul. Because underneath all the noise, the fear, the pressure to be someone else, there's a self you've always known. The one who isn't here to survive but to create. The one who isn't here to play small but to wake up, to remember. We've been taught to avoid the unknown, to stay safe, to stick to the path that looks most secure. But what if the chaos you've been avoiding is the doorway to your power? What if the unraveling is necessary? Not to break you, but to rebuild you into someone real. The truth is, the discomfort you fear is often the birthplace of transformation. When you stop resisting it, when you step into the very space you once tried to avoid, you find a depth inside yourself you didn't know existed. You realize you don't need fixing, you need remembering. And that changes everything. Now is the time to stop waiting. Not out of panic or pressure, but because there is a part of you that's done settling, done shrinking, done hoping that someone else will see you, save you, choose you. This is not about becoming someone new. This is about becoming who you've always been underneath the masks, the roles, the expectations. You don't need permission. You don't need to earn it. You already are it. You already hold the key. But no one can walk this path for you. No one can bring you the life you dream of while you stay seated on the sidelines. That version of you, the one who is alive, awake, grounded in purpose, won't appear out of nowhere. It's a choice, one you make over and over again, especially when it's hard, especially when no one's watching, especially when fear tells you to stop. Imagine living in such integrity that your actions mirror your soul. Imagine moving through your day knowing you're not performing for anyone. You're simply being. There's nothing more liberating than that. Nothing more fulfilling than honoring your own truth in a world that constantly tries to pull you away from it. This kind of life isn't a fantasy. It's possible, it's real, but only if you choose it. Right now, not someday, not when it's convenient. Now take a breath. Look at your life with honesty. What part of you have you been silencing? What dream have you buried just to make others comfortable? And what calling have you ignored because it scared you? And then act, not with pressure, not with urgency, but with intention. Make one decision, one move, one shift that aligns with the life you know is meant for you. Because it's not about the size of the step, it's about the direction. Every small action builds momentum. Every honest choice awakens the part of you that's been waiting in the dark, hoping you'd come back. This is your time. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're finally ready to stop abandoning yourself. Because something deep inside you knows the the life that fits, the one that feels like home, is not out there somewhere. It's waiting in the moment you choose to show up fully, unapologetically, as you. Close your eyes for a moment and listen. Not to the noise around you, but to that quiet pull inside. The one that's been whispering to you for longer than you can remember. It's not loud, it doesn't shout, but it's persistent. That's your truth calling. And the moment you begin to trust it, to follow where it leads, everything begins to shift. You've spent so long looking outward for answers, and people, and success, and approval, but the real awakening doesn't happen out there. It happens the moment you stop running and start turning inward. That's where the real work begins. That's where the transformation lives. Not in becoming someone else, but in remembering who you've always been beneath the noise, the fear, and the masks. It's not about fighting your way through life. It's about returning to yourself with honesty, with clarity, with love. When you do that, the world around you begins to reflect the change inside. People respond differently. Opportunities align. The things you once chased begin to find their way to you naturally. And you, just by living from your truth, become something powerful. A mirror, a reminder, a spark in someone else's darkness. Maybe you don't even realize how much your courage matters, but it does. Your willingness to grow, to heal, to face the hard things. It sends a signal. It says it's possible. And that is more powerful than you'll ever know. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for permission. You're not here by accident. You're here because something in you is ready. You already have everything you need. Strength, wisdom, resilience. It's all inside you, waiting for you to say yes. And maybe, just maybe, someone else is out there right now, searching for the same thing you once were, hurting a reason to believe, a reason to begin again. What if you could be the one to hand them that reason? What if your voice, your story, your action became the bridge for someone else's healing? And that's why it matters that you don't keep this to yourself, that you share it, that you speak it, that you live it, not just for your sake, but for those still stuck in silence, waiting for a sign that it's not too late to come back to themselves. So be that sign. Be that light. Be the reason someone else doesn't give up. Because this isn't just your journey, it's ours. Each step you take toward truth helps illuminate the path for someone else. Each word you speak with honesty becomes an invitation. Each time you rise, you carry someone else with you. And maybe, without even realizing it, you become the reason the stranger begins to believe again. You become the start of someone else's story. And that is everything. Keep going. Keep growing. The world needs you exactly as you are, or about awake, alive, and unafraid to live from the inside out.